My sister and I used to be very close, sharing every joy and sorrow in life. But everything changed the day she announced her third pregnancy, right at the moment when I had just reached the end of a painful journey in my struggle to have a child. I had hoped for comfort and understanding from her, but instead, all I received were harsh words that belittled my dream of becoming a mother. In that moment, I realized that some wounds don't come from strangers, but from the very people we love the most. But the worst was yet to come. 3 years ago, when Jade was pregnant with her third child, I was also going through one of the most difficult periods of my life, the end of my fertility treatment. I had fought for a long time to have a child, trying various methods with the fragile hope that one day I would hold my own baby in my arms. But that treatment failed. And it wasn't just an ordinary failure. It felt like a door slamming shut right in front of me, reminding me that my journey to motherhood was becoming more hopeless with each passing day. I didn't tell anyone about my feelings except for my husband. I didn't want my pain to become a burden on my family. I knew they loved me, but I wasn't sure if they could truly understand the depth of my sorrow. I tried to prepare myself mentally to face reality once again, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. A day after I stopped the medication, I received a text message from Jade. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer any words of encouragement. The message was just a blunt question. Are you pregnant yet? No introduction, no sensitivity. As if the question carried no weight beyond simple curiosity. I stared at my phone screen, a strange uneasiness settling inside me. Jade and I had been close once, but that question made me feel an unfamiliar chill. The tone was sharp, almost forcing me to confront an answer I wasn't ready to admit. I could have ignored that feeling, could have told myself she didn't mean any harm, that it was just poor wording. So, I answered honestly, no, it didn't work this time either. I hoped she would say something comforting, or at least respond with a softer remark. But I never expected what happened next. That very day, Jade showed up at my doorstep. She wasn't there to share in my sorrow. She wasn't there to ask if I was okay. Instead, she looked at me with a smug expression and said, "I'm pregnant again." Her words cut through me like a blade. Before I could even react, she delivered another blow, one that was even more painful. "You should stop making such a big deal about having a baby. Be grateful that you have time to help take care of mine." I froze. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. A part of me wanted to believe that it was just a careless remark, that she didn't really mean it that way. But the way she looked at me, the coldness in her voice, it all made me realize this wasn't an accident. This was how she truly saw me. And in that moment, for the first time, I understood. My sister and I were no longer as close as I had once believed. I used to believe that no matter what happened, Jade would always be my sister. We might have our differences, but family was supposed to be an unbreakable bond. However, that day, when she stood in front of me and bluntly said, "You were only born to be a babysitter, not a mother," I realized that the bond had been severed long ago, without me even noticing. I looked at her in disbelief. I was heartbroken, lost, trying to pick myself up after a series of failures. But instead of comfort or empathy, I was met with a cruel declaration, as if my entire existence was meant only to serve others. I had never seen helping my sister as a burden. On the contrary, I had been happy to support her. I loved my nieces and nephews and had never once complained about babysitting them, caring for them as if they were my own. I had been by her side for both of her previous births, the second person to hold her hand when her husband couldn't summon the courage to witness the delivery. I had been there, patient, dedicated, and always ready to help whenever she needed me. But maybe, because I was always willing, she assumed it was my duty. Jade didn't stop there. She went on to say that I should accept the fact that I was born to support others, that I would never be a mother, but that it didn't matter, because I could still be useful by taking care of her children. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I asked her if something was wrong, if something had made her act this way. I wanted to believe that maybe she was under some kind of pressure I wasn't aware of, but her response only broke me further. Jade looked at me as if I were a foolish child and then said, completely unbothered, "I really don't care about you. I just thought you had finally given up. Good. Now you can focus on my kids instead of those ridiculous dreams of yours." I was stunned. Each word she spoke was like a sharp knife, cutting into me mercilessly. Never in my life did I think I would hear something like that from my own sister. I didn't say another word. I couldn't. I just stood there struggling to hold back tears. Jade showed no regret, no hesitation, no awareness of how cruel her words had been. She simply didn't care. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just lost a sister. I had lost a relationship I had cherished for so many years. She didn't see me as a sibling. She saw me as a tool, a free nanny, someone who was there when she needed me, but not a person with a life or dreams of my own. But what hurt the most wasn't her selfishness. It was the way she completely dismissed my deepest longing to become a mother. I had once hoped that no matter what, Jade would always be an important part of my life. But after that day, I knew. There are family members we are forced to distance ourselves from, not because we want to, but because they have already pushed us away. After that bitter conversation, I realized that my relationship with Jade had completely changed. But instead of stopping, she pushed things even further, as if her cruel words hadn't been enough to break me. My husband and I had done so much for Jade. When her first two children were born, I was the first person by her side. I helped her take care of the kids, changing diapers, rocking them to sleep, feeding them, and even taking them to the doctor when she needed help. There were nights I stayed up entirely just to soothe the babies while she and her husband slept peacefully. I never complained or asked for anything in return because I believed that's what family is supposed to do for each other. My husband was no exception. Despite his busy job, he always made time to help Jade and her husband, fixing things around their house, taking the kids out to play, and even offering financial support when they were struggling. We did all of it with genuine kindness, without expecting anything in return. But Jade never truly appreciated it. When I decided to distance myself after that conversation, she showed no remorse, no attempt to mend things. Instead, she started openly criticizing me to our family. She told our parents that I had become selfish, that I had changed, and that I no longer cared about the family like I used to. She said I was trying to become someone I shouldn't, a mother, when the only thing I should have been doing was supporting her. What hurt me the most wasn't the criticism itself, but the harsh truth behind it. Jade wasn't upset because I had distanced myself. She was upset because I was no longer helping her. No more free babysitting. No more someone to rely on whenever she needed. No more sacrificing my time and energy for her family without expecting anything in return. And that made her angry. I started to realize that, to Jade, I was never a person with my own life. In her eyes, I was just a supporting character in her story, someone she could summon whenever she needed and discard when she didn't. At first, my parents didn't believe Jade could say such cruel things. But when I told them everything about our conversation, they were deeply disappointed. They tried to reason with her, telling her that what she had said to me was too harsh and that she owed me an apology. But Jade didn't care. She wasn't sorry. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. In fact, she told me I was overreacting and that I don't need you to watch my kids anyway. That sentence felt like a slap in the face. After everything I had done, after all the sacrifices and dedication, the only thing I received in return was coldness and contempt. I used to believe that family was about love and support. But now I realize that some relationships, even those tied by blood, can become so toxic that they can never be repaired. And to Jade, I was no longer her sister. I was just a babysitter she no longer needed. Jade's words echoed in my mind for days after that conversation. It wasn't because I couldn't believe she could say such cruel things, but because I realized a heartbreaking truth. She had never truly seen me as an individual with my own life, my own dreams, and my own worth. To her, I was just a supporter, a babysitter she could take advantage of, and when I no longer played that role, she had no hesitation in discarding me. After that conversation, I chose to step back. I didn't text, didn't visit, and didn't help her with anything anymore. I thought she would soon notice the change and maybe, just maybe, she would regret her words. But I was wrong. At first, Jade seemed surprised. She didn't understand why I was distant, why I no longer visited her house as often as before. But instead of reflecting on herself and what she had said, she turned to criticizing me. "Oh, you're bitter just because you don't have kids? You're just trying to throw a tantrum so everyone will pity you, aren't you?" Her words no longer hurt me as they once did. Instead, they only reinforced one thing. This was no longer the sister I once cherished. My parents were heartbroken to see us drifting apart. They tried to reconcile us, spoke to both of us, but all efforts were in vain. I had set my boundaries, and Jade refused to acknowledge that she had done anything wrong. At that moment, my parents did something that I am truly grateful for. They stood by my side. They told Jade that she had gone too far, that she needed to apologize. But she had no intention of doing so. Instead, she continued to defend her stance. "I was just telling the truth. She could be more useful. She keeps trying to become someone she's not supposed to be, and now she's sulking." I had heard enough. I no longer tried to understand Jade. I no longer wanted to find excuses for her behavior. I only knew one thing. I could not continue a relationship where I was not respected. So, I decided to cut ties. I stopped going to her house, stopped responding to her messages. I no longer tormented myself, no longer searched for ways to fix things. I accepted that some relationships, even those bound by family, are not worth holding on to. And more importantly, I chose to put myself first. For too many years, I had lived to please others, trying to be an important part of her life. But now I realized that I did not need her approval to have worth. I did not need to be the babysitter or the devoted younger sister just to be acknowledged. I could live my own life, without Jade in it, and that was the moment I was truly free. After deciding to walk away from Jade, I felt an unfamiliar emptiness in my heart. Not because I missed her, but because I never thought there would come a day when I would have to sever ties with my own sister. I used to believe that sisterhood was something irreplaceable, that no matter what happened, we would always find a way to mend things. But now I realize that family bonds are not defined solely by blood, but also by mutual respect and love. Jade never respected me. She never saw me as someone with dreams, emotions, or a life of my own. And I understood that I could no longer stay in a relationship where I wasn't acknowledged as an individual. At first, cutting off contact with Jade wasn't easy. My parents kept trying to convince me to forgive her, but I no longer wanted to try. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was exhausted from constantly seeking her respect. Jade continued living her life without a care for the rift between us. She never sought to apologize, nor did she seem bothered by losing a sister who had once sacrificed so much for her. She lived exactly as she had always said she would, indifferent to me, seeing me as nothing more than a tool she no longer needed. And that was what allowed me to finally let go, learning to put myself first. I used to put Jade and her family above my own life. I spent too much time taking care of her children, helping her through difficult times, and forgetting that I had my own life to live. I lost myself in the process of trying to please her, but now I have changed. I have started focusing on myself, taking care of my mental and physical health, spending time with my husband and those who truly love me. I no longer feel useless or inadequate because I can't have children. I have learned to appreciate what I have instead of letting Jade's toxic words haunt me. I now understand that I don't need to have children to be a person of value. I can find meaning in life in many other ways, by taking time for myself, exploring new things, and most importantly, building a life where I feel genuinely happy. Not everyone deserves a place in your life. Walking away from Jade was one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it was also what freed me from a toxic relationship. I once thought I needed her approval to feel worthy, but now I know that my worth is not dependent on what she thinks of me. I no longer hold resentment toward Jade. I don't wish for her to change or to come back as the loving sister she once was. I only hope that wherever she is, she won't continue to hurt others the way she hurt me. As for me, I will keep living my life, one that is no longer bound by disrespect and exploitation. And for the first time in many years, I truly feel free.